Good morning, everyone. I'll open the council for the 11th of November. I've got an apology from Izzy Ford for lateness, seconded by Councillor Sauli. Thank you. All those in favour? Aye. Those against? Carried. We've got one public speaker this morning, Hannah Pilkington-Chung, and she is in... Hannah? I think you probably need to unmute.
Kia ora.
Hi, you've got 5 minutes.
Sweet, cool. Kia ora katoa. I'll just turn my video on. Kia ora katoa ngā mihi kia koe e te kaunihira mo te whakawātia o tēnei wā ki te whakarongo kia hau. A te ata nei ka kōrero au mo te kaupapa o te free fares. Ko te taki nei te whakaoranga o te tae me te hapori katoa. My name is Tana and I'm speaking today on behalf of the Aotearoa Collective for Public Transport Equity. I want to tautoko the motion for Porirua City Council to join this collective. Our vision is that everyone can use public transport to stay connected to their communities, get around their regions, and travel in a way that's kind to the environment. The Aotearoa Collective is a growing coalition of more than 40 organisations united under our Free Fares campaign. Members include student unions, including those for Victoria University and Massey University Wellington, climate groups such as Generation Zero and Greenpeace, unions including the Public Service Association and First Union, and organisations that address poverty such as Wellington City Mission. We are calling on the Minister of Transport, Michael Woods, to implement free public transport nationwide for community service card holders, full and part-time tertiary students and other 25s. We want to see this fully funded by central government in next year's budget and free fares beginning in 2023. We also acknowledge the need for this government to reduce fares for other passengers and to increase the reach, frequency and quality of services in underserved areas. This is for our people, for families and communities, and for the climate. Free public transport reduces transport poverty, reducing isolation and improving community connection. One community service card holder told me he has to save up his money to see his family in Kapiti once a month. And I know students like myself in Porirua who only travel to their university campuses twice a week because finances are stretched, compromising their studies because the cost of public transport is so high. Not only will free public transport improve lives, but it will also reduce emissions. In the emissions reduction plan, the government has proposed the target of reducing travel by cars and light vehicles by 20% by 2035. But how are we to incentivise that shift? Studies have shown that making fares free is one of the most effective ways to encourage a modal shift away from personal vehicles. Of course, frequent and good quality services are needed too, and disincentives for private car use. But free fares are a key part of the package and are especially important to ensure a just and equitable transition. We believe that free fares should start with community service card holders and students who are on low incomes, as well as under 25s, to instill a habit of public transport use as the norm. We are making our ask by submitting on the government's emissions reduction plan consultation, which is open until the 24th of November, and then directly to the Minister of Transport early next year. We would love your support for this campaign in 2 ways. Pass a motion today to join the Aotearoa Collective for Public Transport Equity. This would show Porirua City Council's support for our ask. You can also join our coalition as an individual councillor, showing your personal support. When we submit to the emissions reduction plan, we would love to be able to point to a strong list of councils and individual councillors who support our ask. Supporting councillors will also be listed on our website, freefares.nz, and in media releases about our campaign. Simply adding Porirua City Council and the names of any councillors that want to join is a huge help, and hopefully will mean that we are successful in achieving free fares. Thanks so much for listening to this kōrero. I hope to see Porirua City Council join the Aotearoa Collective for Public Transport Equity this morning and continue to prioritise caring for people and the planet in your decision making. Ngā mihi.
Thank you, Hannah. Has anyone got any questions for Hannah? But yep, Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, thanks, Hannah. That's great. I love the idea of what you're proposing, what's being proposed here. I just heard in the middle of your piece there about disincentives for car use. Can you expand on what you're thinking about there?
I was just referring to it as one of the tools the government can use to encourage us to shift from private transport to public transport. And yeah, as the government's planning to reduce private car usage, there's going to need to be disincentives, even if that just means less money put towards catering cars in central cities and in parking fees and stuff like that. But we're suggesting that we can't just have disincentives, but we also need to have incentives for public transport so that the transition is fair and people don't get put up by it being more expensive to use cars. Hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? Okay, thank you, Hannah. You can watch us online, okay? It'll be through the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, have I got any conflicts of interest declarations? No. No extraordinary notifications of business? No. Confirmation of minutes from the 30th of September. Have you got something, Councillor Morell? No? No conflict? No? Okay. You own a car. Oh dear. Never mind. It's not electric either, so you're in trouble. So confirmation of minutes from the 30th of September. Yes?
Kona matua. Regarding this is page 9 of diligent for my council colleagues.
Page what number?
Page 9.
9.
The minute book in regards to the resolutions transferred from public excluded into public, the item 12.2.2 does not reflect the vote that was held on that issue, where both Councillor Trillin and myself voted against the measure. Can we have that incorporated into the minutes?
Yes, we can. Yep, noted. We can. Okay, any other changes for those minutes? Excuse me. Okay, it was seconded by Councillor Hayward with those changes?
Yeah.
All those in favour?
Aye.
All those against? Carried. Report of the Mayor. We've got about 6 weeks till Christmas, and at the moment it's feeling quite strange without going to our college prize givings, and I'm sure you're probably all missing them because usually we're all out and about. Obviously, we've had some big changes with the 3 waters being mandated, and there's some discussion obviously in the community about that. We were lucky that the working group's been put out, and we've got 2 mayors from the region on that, with Lynn Patterson from Masterton and Campbell Barry from the Hutt. So that should be interesting. Obviously, I challenged Mayor Barry from the Hutt City to the vax race, to 90. That's not looking healthy for Porirua at the moment, with over 7,000 residents still to be vaccinated, and we're hanging behind. So I really don't want to sing, but unfortunately this Saturday's vaccination in Waitangarua has been postponed till next weekend. So I think we all need to start preparing a song, possibly. We've also had our youth awards this week with partners last week. All of us, if the mayor goes down, the team goes down. So what else have we had? Police graduations and the opening of the cruising club. And last Saturday, Mayor Grant Smith from Palmerston North and I unveiled the heritage panels on Centennial Highway with the Hei Aurora Pukurua Bay group explaining the building of the road 82 years ago. And then Wendy and I attended the handover of the executive block, B block at Whitireia to Ngāti Taua. So the ancestral land of the iwi, and so it's obviously great to have them back there. What else have I done? We've had the official opening of Whina Tapu this week, and a number of you attended, and I have to say it's a fabulous space now, light and bright, no purple carpet, and it's looking really good. And on Friday, tomorrow, we have the opening of the Dewan Syrian restaurant at 3:30 in Coppin Court. So people might want to get out and support that at some point. So that's all from me. Is Taku online or not? No report from him then. Okay. So we'll move to committee recommendations. So Councillor Leggett.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to move the recommendations of the Te Puna Kōrero meetings of the 21st of October and the 4th of November.
Second to Councillor Duncan. Any issues with any of those? Okay. All those in favour? All those against? Carried. I'll hand it over to Councillor Trillin. Notice of motion? Yep.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to move that the Council agree to sign on as a member of the Aotearoa Collective for Public Transport Equity's Free Fares campaign, and note that the Free Fares campaign is asking for central government to fund free public transport across all of Aotearoa for all hours and days for the following groups: tertiary students, community service card holders, and under 25s.
Okay, so I have seconded that. Do you want to speak to that?
I would like to, and actually I don't need to say a whole lot because I think Hannah actually covered off a lot of the things I would have liked to have said in my speech, so thank you very much, Hannah. I think what would be useful is just to highlight specifically why this is so important for Porirua. So first of all, I think free public transport for these groups aligns with multiple of our strategic priorities as a council, both in terms of proactive response to the climate crisis and also children and young people at the heart of the city as well, in terms of the benefit that our young people are going to see from this. These groups getting access to free public transport funded by central government will have a disproportionately positive impact on Porirua because of our demographics and in particular because of how young we are as a city. We know that about 40% of people living in Porirua are under 25, and all of those people would be covered by this. And you think of all the young people in our city who are looking for work opportunities, study opportunities that they might not be able to easily get to, particularly those in Wellington. This would substantially reduce the barriers for a lot of our young people for doing that. For anyone who wants to do tertiary education and go in and study at Victoria University in Wellington, this is going to be massively beneficial as well, and obviously to everyone who's a community services card holder. So this is something that I strongly support. I think it would have a huge positive impact on Porirua. I think it would be fantastic for all of the councils across the Wellington region to support this together, and I know there are motions going up to other councils as well, and I strongly urge all of my council colleagues to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Obviously, I support it. It's almost come to the table back in Anna Coffey and Nick Leggett's days. They tried to get something similar. We had a number of people coming to us, especially from the education sector, asking for that in Porirua. And I see the gold card really highly used by people, so I see no reason why we can't do it for other ones, especially when we have empty trains and buses going. So I totally support it. Anybody else want to speak to this? Yes, Councillor Hayward.
Thank you, Koro Matua. Thank you, Councillor Trillin. I'll be voting in support of the measure. I would also urge the campaign to also, as was mentioned by Hannah, to continue advocacy with those with accessibility challenges, particularly those with visual impairments, hearing impairments, who, as I understand the motion, doesn't necessarily cover those individuals if they do not have a community services card. But I would encourage them to also look after those individuals who, because of their inabilities to access an able-bodied world, are disadvantaged financially because of the need to access public transport. Kia ora.
Councillor Ford.
Kia ora. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I am in support of this as well. Well done, Josh. But I also want to acknowledge Ali Liotta, who was a Porirua boy who started this journey as well many, many years ago to try and get cheaper, fairer fares for children who are travelling from Porirua out to Vic University. I think cheaper transport means better access to education, so it's a no-brainer.
Anybody else? Councillor Duncan, excuse me.
Yeah, I'll be voting in support of the motion. I grew up in an era where I had free transport to my college, and it makes sense to me. And we may have concerns about peak times, but most of the people that'll be on the trains and buses at that time would be the ones that really can't afford it anyway. So it just makes perfect sense to me.
Councillor Morell.
Yeah, well, I'm a bit conflicted here, I have to say. I have some sympathies, but there's nothing free in this world. Someone else has to pay. And so whatever is free, there is a consequence of that. So on that basis, I just believe that, if you start giving free this, free that, free everything, even if it was a reduced fare, I'd really support that. But somewhere along the line, someone else has got to pay for it. And so I'm speaking up for those people who will have to pay for it. And so I'm going to be voting against it. I have some sympathy, but as I say, there is no free lunch in this world.
Councillor Waddle.
I support this. It's a pretty simple thing, really. To Councillor Morell's point, if nothing's free, does that mean we do nothing?
Anybody else? Yes, go. Mike.
Just one more comment. I'd remind Councillor Morell that him and I are both gold card holders.
We may well be gold card, but mine, I've never used it. I will never use it. It is a benefit, but that is, it is a benefit. But that's the system, and I agree. I disagree with it. I don't believe that we should have free transport.
Okay, I will put the motion, seeing there's no one else. So all those in favour? All those against? Just Ewan, and record your vote. Yes, thank you. Okay, so that's passed. We now move to 11.2, the meeting schedule. Move it to put it on the table, seconded by Councillor Ford. Any issues? I'm sure there's not. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. 11.3, submissions on the Resource Consent Management Bill. I'll move it, put it on the table. Thank you, Councillor Trillin, seconded. Do you want to talk to it, Stuart, or anyone? Any questions from anybody on this? Yes, we do. So we've got Councillor Morrell, followed by Councillor Trillin and Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, I'm not sure this is the. Well, there is a point here. I'm a little concerned about how this is all developing, particularly with the view of the intensification and the narrowing of streets and all the things that are coming into the system now. If you drive around Kenepuru Landing, there's some streets you can't get down, and whilst we are trying to get rid of cars, the fact of life is there'll always be cars. And Kenepuru Landing, I believe, is the potential of being a suburb that is not that desirable to live in. And there are and I am concerned that, and I know it's not. This is where the government wants us to go, and I understand there's certainly a need for more housing, and certainly, but I think there has to be. We have to accommodate the vehicle transport or the vehicles that are going. Public transport is public transport, but there are parts of this world that will never get public transport into. So they've always got to get from A to B. And if you're going to get from A to B, you can't expect everyone to bike. It's just an impossibility. So we're always going to have cars, and we're always going to have garages, and we're always going to have to parking. So I'm just concerned where we're going with this because, and even in central Auckland, there's huge concerns there as well. And it's just going to develop, and it is developing. You go to Kenepuru Landing, there are some streets that you cannot get down because of the parking and the number of cars. And you can't, and people are not now renting there or buying there because they cannot accommodate their vehicles. And, there may be a world in the future that I won't be here and there won't be any cars, but right now we've got them. And I think we're just going one step too far too quickly in changing the intensification and the environment that we're currently creating.
No question in there for Stuart then? No? Josh. Councillor Trillin.
Kia ora, thank you, Your Worship. Thanks, Stuart. I remember we had a conversation last week or the week before around potentially including something around requirements for affordable housing and things like that. I might have missed it. I'm not sure if that made it in, but I was wondering if you could just speak to that.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Councillor Trillin. There's actually not scope within the bill to address affordable housing, and the Ministry for the Environment have indicated that even in new legislation that they are not looking at going there. Personally, I think that's an opportunity lost. If Council is of a mind to do so, we could include a paragraph in the submission indicating that we would support if it's through the Resource Management Act or latter legislation to encourage affordable housing. Happy to take that advice.
Yeah, so I think just quickly speaking to that, so this was a conversation that I'd had with Stuart when we initially discussed this at workshop around the potential for if we are requiring a greater degree of density, that as part of that we could build requirements into it, whether or not that would be something set by government or whether it would just be enabling councils to build these requirements in for a particular percentage of new houses and a new housing development to be social housing or affordable housing or something to that extent. We don't currently have that power. So that's something that I would quite like to see in here. I understand that it might not be achieved through this current bill, but it might be a good opportunity to, I guess, say that to the government. In terms of process, if we wanted to include something in here, would that require a formal amendment, or is that just something that you're able to add in?
I think the problem with the affordable is no one knows what affordable is. So that is where we all tracked around the table and we can't force developers to put social housing into developments. The government has to want to go into set areas. So, Stuart, Wendy, I'm not sure where we're going on that one. Stuart.
I mean, we are a bit unusual in New Zealand in that we don't regulate for affordable housing. Certainly in other OECD countries they do. Personally, I think probably the best opportunity is through new legislation, which isn't far away. I think perhaps 18 months we will have a new act. As part of that new Natural and Built Environments Act, there will be a national planning framework. One of the topics that addresses is housing supply and affordability. So I think that is probably the best opportunity to advocate on that matter.
I'm happy to wait until then.
Okay, Councillor Duncan.
Look, what a great set of things you put forward. I think what a great effort from the team there, eh? One thing that struck me on page 29, item 8 there, when you talked to the use of the word vires, it says, we seek confirmation that the approach we have taken to qualifying matters in our PDP is still vires. Should that be intra-vires or is that?
Quite correct there, Councillor Duncan. I was picked up in legal review. It is intra-vires, and I'm not sure whether we should still have Latin in submissions at this point. It's legally relevant, yeah.
I think they've noted that. Thank you, Councillor Duncan. Anybody else? No? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? Carried. Now I'll move that we go into public excluded, seconded by, thank you, Councillor Waddle. All those in favour? All those against? Carried.